4 missing people, piles of folded clothes, and giant footprints at every scene. Could Bigfoot really be the answer? I know Painted Rock National Park better than I know myself. Every ridge, every creek, every piece of native art rock is etched into my memory. My name is Megan Wilder. I'm 32 and I found my solitude and my home in the park. I spend my days split between walking around the park, greeting tourists, changing out trash bags and recycling, making sure the trails are still clear and well marked. I give out maps to visitors and share advice about which parts of the park are the best to see during their visit. And I'm assigned a small log cabin, which is where I rest when I'm off duty and sleep. It's a peaceful life, and it feels safe to me most of the time. On the day this story begins, my radio squawked with an interruption. A group of hikers had reported that their friend Ross was just missing near the lower ridge. I responded automatically, my voice calm and professional, but I felt a dread lingering over me. I tucked the radio back into my vest and began making my way down the trails toward the lower ridge. It was great weather for hiking, but I felt a sense of urgency as I walked towards the group. Vinnie, who had worked at the park for 2 decades longer than I had, was already with the group of hikers, who were panicked and frantic. Vinnie shot off a burst of information toward me, then guided the hikers along the side trail towards one of the staff log cabins. I continued along the trail that they had been walking on. As I walked, my mind wandered to the 3 other missing people that had recently vanished and never come back. We had searched for weeks. We had had dogs out and drones in the air, but we had never found them. My stomach started to churn into knots as I spotted the familiar footprints embedded in the ground. The same large footprints. 5 toes, no claws, no shoes, just bare footprints. A scientist had analyzed them and said if they belonged to a person, he would be at least 8 feet tall. I had never seen an 8-foot-tall man wandering around the park, but I had seen these prints before, 3 times before. And that's when I saw it again. Those prints, they led to a large rock, and neatly on top of the rock was a perfectly folded t-shirt, pants, and socks. This was a calling card of someone unknown. The pattern was undeniable. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, and the clothes looked new. Even his shoes were laid out perfectly, with the laces tied. With gloved hands, I picked up the clothes and examined them carefully. For a moment, I felt the butterflies in my stomach lurch. I've heard stories of strange creatures in these woods, whispers of giants that no one has seen twice, but I've always dismissed them. Superstition. And yet, something about these footprints made my rational mind falter. I took photos of the prints and the clothes and made notes in my book, my instincts the whole time screaming at me to leave. But duty rooted me here. I folded the clothes back the way they had been and bagged them into a clear bag. Not exactly the stuff of CSI, but preserved well enough. The next morning, I returned to the trail and that scene with gloves and my camera. The rain from last night had left the ground soft, and the impressions were more vivid. I took a photo of each footprint with a ruler next to it, 15 inches long. I made a note of it and shuddered. Whoever or whatever made those prints was big. This trail started at the rock pool, walked towards the rock where the clothes were left folded, and a few feet later vanished, as abruptly as if the earth itself swallowed whoever left them. I searched for nearby footprints for 10 more minutes before I finally accepted that they just stopped there. I looked up at the tall trees and settled on the idea that whatever this being was, human or not, it must have climbed a tree. There was no other explanation. There really wasn't much more to see or document. One of the hikers later identified the clothes as belonging to his missing friend. I had my photos and notes, but all they showed was the same unsettling pattern. Huge footprints that disappeared abruptly, and a pile of perfectly folded clothes. Back at my cabin, I spread the photos around the table. I am meticulous and organized. Every detail matters. My mind swung between logic and folklore, campfire stories, old ranger whispers about giants in the forest, and the need to rationalize what I had seen. I've always been skeptical ever since I was a kid. I didn't believe in ghosts, the boogeyman, or even Santa Claus, but I was struggling to come up with anything that was logical. Vinnie opened the cabin door carrying a plastic bag. He held it up with a smile on his face. "Got your favorite," he said, pulling a sandwich out, followed by a bag of chips. "How's the Bigfoot search going?" I smiled. "You can't seriously believe this is Bigfoot doing this." Why not? Better than the alternative, isn't it? It's either Bigfoot or it's a person, and I'd really rather believe Bigfoot is out there than having a killer on the loose. Do you really think an 8 foot tall, hairy wild beast is out there folding clothes neatly? I mean, what's the reason? I asked. Well, I don't know. It's his home. I don't like clothes just left out in my house, do you? I laughed as I imagined what Vinny had said. An image formed in my mind of Bigfoot wearing a pink apron and carrying a duster around the park. I don't want to believe there's a creature here that's making people disappear, let alone leaving a calling card. But with each disappearance, I was starting to question it more. I looked at the photo of the first missing hiker, a woman in her 30s who was with her family. Her husband calls every day, asking if there are any further clues, and he travels up here every weekend to look for himself. I slowly let myself think about the possibility that what was happening was unknown, that the entity that was snatching people from hiking trails and tents was, in fact, not human. The only evidence of its existence were the footprints left behind. In a moment of weakness, I Googled Bigfoot and went down a rabbit hole. Several hours later, with the full moon high, I made a choice. I left a small offering on the porch. Berries on the first night. In the morning, they were gone. The second night, I left a carved pine figurine, and that was also gone in the morning. I didn't know who I was making a silent plea to, or if it was for help or understanding or mercy, but I continued leaving offerings. I felt a little bit like I was going crazy, but I started to notice things around the park that I hadn't seen before. Branches that were bent in unnatural patterns, a deer that lingered longer and let me get much closer than it should have, and the unnatural silence that sometimes fell over the trees, where the birds went quiet in mid-morning. Sleep began to come fitfully, haunted by piles of neatly folded clothes and impossible footprints. The forest felt alive in an unsettling way. I had always felt at home here. I had come here because this was where I felt safe. But things had started to shift, and my home, that I've come to know so well and felt so safe in, no longer felt that way. I had 4 missing people, 4 piles of clothes, and 4 sets of the same huge footprints, but nothing else. If this was an animal attack, there would have been signs of it. Nothing with paws could fold clothes with such precision, and nothing with claws could leave a scene clean. The second person who had gone missing was a woman. She was careful, respectful of the land, leaving no trace or trash behind. Her name's Lola. She's 26 and has been missing for 3 weeks. I feel the familiar tug of dread and responsibility as I have followed the trails, searching for her. Every tree and branch felt like it could hold secrets that I would just never be told. That day that I had found her clothes folded neatly hung over a low-hanging branch, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Everything she'd been wearing was folded and hung up, and the laces on her shoes were tied in loose bows, hanging from the same branch as her clothes. The footprints around the tree were massive, beginning at a rock face and vanishing near a cluster of pine trees. But as I crouched and examined the scene, I noticed something new. A clump of coarse, reddish-brown hair. This was my first real clue, but it was the only one I would get. Later tests confirmed that the hair belonged to no known species. My journal filled up with sketches and notes and theories. Vinny asked me questions I couldn't answer. The day after Ross disappeared, we sat together and looked at all the photos from the 4 missing persons scenes. We talked about Julie, the first woman to go missing. We studied the photos, but nothing obvious stood out. We talked about Lola and the unknown species hair that I had found. I mean, call me crazy, but it could be Bigfoot. The hair is clear evidence that we are not dealing with a human, Vinny argued. It's clear evidence that an unknown species passed through that area doesn't mean it's Bigfoot, I answered back. Why would Bigfoot want or force these people to strip down to their birthday suits? I don't know, Vinny said, but why would anyone, Bigfoot or human? The third disappearance had been only 12 days before Ross. His name was Evan Price, 44, and a solo hiker. He was experienced in the park. He checked in at the ranger station, signed the logbook, asked about the water levels near the upper creek. I remembered his face because he looked a lot like my brother. When he didn't return by nightfall, we followed procedure. Alerts were sent out, search teams assembled, and drones launched at first light. But I already knew where the trail would end. We found his clothes 2 days later, with the set of huge footprints nearby, naturally. There were, as usual, no signs of a scuffle or that anyone had put up a fight. I noticed then that there were no human footprints around. My mind flashed back to the photos on my table, and I realized Where the clothes were found, only the huge footprints were seen. No shoe prints, no human footprints. Evan's clothes hadn't been folded. In this case, there had been a long, stone, smooth shelf overlooking the ravine, and whoever it was that had done this had used that space to carefully arrange, as if someone was trying to remember how humans dress themselves, the shirt on top, the pants beneath, the socks side by side, and the boots at the bottom placed neatly together, toes pointing away. But in the ground, the same massive impressions from the creek to that rock and back to the creek again. Vinnie had stood beside me while I documented the scene with my camera. "It's learning," he had commented. I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew it, and I didn't want those words to linger in the air. My offering ritual continued, though I didn't mention it to anyone. I left food farther from the cabin now, always in the same place. Berries, dried meat, a wool blanket that I had bought in town and never used. And every morning that space was empty. My place of offering was amongst the trees, and I never saw any footprints of any kind, but something was taking the offerings every night. The park itself began to feel unsettled. Trails I had walked 1,000 times felt weirdly wrong and nightmarish. I started to be on edge to hear footsteps where there were none. I found stacks of stones where I hadn't seen any before. Once I found a tree trunk right along the trail marked with deep gouges that were new, and they looked deliberate. I felt like I was seeing the markings of some old culture, but fresh in the bark. That latest missing hiker, that fourth person missing, hadn't been alone. Ross had been part of a group, 5 people, and all experienced backpackers. They camped near the Western Ridge every year, well within marked boundaries, and they were just back for their annual trip. They all followed the rules and respected the park. Ross had disappeared on the trail. His 4 friends were ahead of him, leaving him walking at the back. They talked as they hiked, and sometime after 4 o'clock, Peter noticed that Ross was gone. By then, they were just yards away from their campsite. Vinnie and I had hiked to the campsite and found it undisturbed. Ross's tent was still pitched, his sleeping bag made up inside. The only items missing were the ones he had taken on the hike, his backpack and water bottle. He hadn't been back to the campsite since his disappearance. I searched the grounds and the area he had vanished in once again, as you do when someone just vanishes. You look again and again. "How does a guy just disappear yards away from his campsite?" Vinnie asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. I mean, when did the group last actually lay eyes on him?" "Well, they took a picture together close to the mushroom trails. That's only 10 minutes from here, so he disappeared sometime in that 10 minutes. "I don't get it. They've been here so many times before. How did he get lost?" I looked around the trees, the brightly marked trail signs. It just didn't make sense. I mean, they didn't want to admit it, but they'd been drinking all day. It's possible Ross just got turned around, lost his bearings. I guess, but then why is there no sign of him, no footprint trail? I'm going to just backtrack the trail they were on. I headed down the path and then took a right onto the mushroom trail. It was one of my favorite trails to walk. The trees created a thick canopy of shade so deep that it allowed mushrooms to grow and to proliferate, covering the park ground. It was beautiful, peaceful, and sometimes eerie. I searched along the path for any signs of Ross slipping or falling or just having been there. It didn't dry out very much here in this dark part of the forest. After maybe 15 minutes of walking the trail and looking, I spotted something out of place a few feet off the path. I radioed back to Vinnie, and he came to me along with a member of the search team. I pointed to the flashlight, picked it up in my gloved hand, and immediately found the carved initials that Peter had told us would be in it. Ross had etched in RFS, his initials, into the side. "It's definitely his, then?" Vinnie asked as he approached. "Seems like it," I said. "But there's nothing else here. No scuff marks, no signs he slipped or fell, no footprints where the flashlight is. But there are on the trail itself. So maybe he threw it. Does it still work?" I clicked the button and watched as a stream of warm light left the flashlight. "Yeah, it works, so why would he throw it?" "Well, because maybe he tried to throw it at something," Vinnie said. I raised my eyebrow, giving Vinnie the "yeah, okay" look, but I also smiled. I was starting to accept the idea that maybe some kind of undiscovered bipedal creature actually exists. I mean, we're discovering new ocean-dwelling creatures pretty much every day, so why not, on occasion, a land-dwelling one? That night, I filled pages with everything I'd observed: patterns, locations, maps, times, weather conditions. I even tracked the moon cycle to be thorough. I pulled out a map and marked the specific locations of the disappearances, and I realized something. They were slightly spread out, but they formed a loose boundary. It was hard to say, but it could be a perimeter of some kind. The next morning, I packed a bag and left the cabin before dawn. I left a note for Vinnie, told him where I was going. I followed the edge of that invisible boundary and walked deeper than I ever had before into a section of the park that we quietly discouraged visitors from exploring. It was old-growth forest, full of unsteady terrain and downed trees. The silence was so complete it rang in my ears. I walked a long time, but near noon I found footprints. I was now following the same huge imprints as before. I had a sudden realization that what I was doing was not only stupid, it was dangerous. By the time I stopped playing out what I might find and how it might end my life, I noticed a second set of footprints. Human this time. Almost definitely a man's, walking side by side the larger ones. Neither one was wearing shoes, but neither was there any sign of hesitation. No drag marks. They led off the trail deeper into the trees, and I followed them. My heart was pounding loudly, and for the first time since moving to the park, I felt the same anxiety and imminent danger that first drove me here in the first place. I searched another 2 hours, at times walking in circles, losing footprints and picking them up again. And then I found crumpled foliage, bushes that had been trampled and flattened. I was bracing myself to take a step in when I heard something behind me. I turned around lightning fast and I saw Ross. He was sitting on a fallen log at the edge of a narrow clearing. He wore no clothes, but he had some kind of fur wrapped around him. When he looked up at me, his eyes were glazed over, and it took a second for him to speak. "You're real," he said quietly. I came closer, very slowly, and crouched several feet away, careful not to rush him. "Ross, I'm Megan Wilder. I'm a park ranger. You've been missing for 4 days." He frowned, rubbing his face with trembling hands. 4? He shook his head. "Doesn't feel like that." "Where have you been?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't remember." "What do you remember?" I asked. He hesitated and looked up like he was trying to search through a fog. "I heard something near the trees. I thought it was an animal, and then there was this shape. Big, like a gorilla kind of, but taller than me." I held my face still, hiding any shock I felt as he talked. "It didn't hurt me," he continued, "but I don't know what happened to my clothes or how I got like this." "Did it speak?" I asked. "No, well, not with words." He pressed his fingers to his temples. "It's hard to explain. It felt like being told what to do without hearing anything." "What about food? Have you had any food?" Ross grimaced. "I think it was some kind of soup." He shuddered. It had mushrooms, and after I ate it, my vision went blurry. That stuff knocked me out." "Were you alone?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "No." His gaze drifted past me and into the trees, into the deepest part of the forest. "I'm sure there were others, but I don't remember what they looked like." A chill crept up my spine. "Do you have any idea how long they had been there?" "No." "Why did you come back?" I asked. He looked at me then, truly looked at me, not looking so glazed anymore, and something uneasy flickered across his face. "I don't think it meant to let me go. I think I just wandered off, and it just didn't stop me." I took his arm, and we walked back toward the trail as the light drained from the forest. The woods were unnaturally quiet, every sound we made sharp against a muted background. I desperately tried to ignore the breaking branches I could hear behind us. I didn't want to panic. I didn't want to panic Ross, but it took what felt like an anxious eternity to get us back to the main trails, back to the cabin. I had radioed ahead to Vinnie to get hot drinks and food ready. After that whole thing happened, I kept in touch with Ross for a few weeks. He started therapy, but still didn't remember anything new. He now doubts that there was any creature at all. His belief is that for some reason he doesn't recall, he ate some mushrooms, and that's all there is to it. I don't know what's out there deep in the old-growth forest, but no one else has disappeared. The 3 other missing people are still missing, and we have no actual logical or legal or scientific reason to believe that they are in the forest with Bigfoot. There are many other reasons a person can go missing in this park. A bad fall, a panther, a grizzly bear, drowning. I don't know where the missing people are, but as for me, I am still leaving offerings every night. A little kindness in the darkness, a peace offering, a request for mercy, an attempt at a treaty for us to leave each other alone. Whatever it is I'm doing, I'm still doing it, and my offerings are gone every morning. Sometimes I find something that's been left behind in its place, a pine cone, an arrangement of stones, twigs woven together like the very archetypal beginning of a basket. I always say thank you out loud, hoping whatever or whoever it is hears me. Peace seems to have been restored to Painted Rock National Park, but there's always another mystery just around the corner. If you enjoyed this reading, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future stories. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. This has been Tales by Rachel, where we breathe life into every story.